Welcome to the Style Cloud YouTube channel. I'm Melissa, one of the founders, and you'll hear my voice in many of our videos. Our channel is packed with tutorials and web design tips for photographers and other creative business owners, so don't forget to hit subscribe to hear all about our new videos. In this training, I'm going to run through domains and hosting. Now, if you are coming from an all-in-one platform like Squarespace or Showit, or maybe you've got a WordPress website but you haven't looked at your hosting arrangements or where your domain lives for ages, this training is for you. We actually need two types of hosting. One is for our domain and one is for our website files. And often people think you need to buy the two of these things together, but you absolutely don't. All of mine are separate. I buy all of my domains from GoDaddy, and I don't really use any of the GoDaddy services at all, and I buy my website hosting from someone else. There are pros and cons to them being in the same place. It doesn't matter which option you have, but I do tend to like to keep them separate just in case, not that it's ever happened, but there's a problem with my website hosting. I like my domains to be independent of that, but please don't worry. All I would say at this stage is if you're not quite sure how to access your domain name, or maybe you're coming from a service where Wix or Squarespace, where you bought the domain as part of a web hosting package, it could be a really good idea to transfer that away from that all-in-one provider and into a domain host that you control. And when we say hosting, what we mean is domain hosts are really just registries. It's when we buy a domain name and we give all our details and so that everybody in the internet knows who owns what. And a lot of the big domain registrars will also offer extra incentives like free email or a security certificate, but you really don't need any of that because you can get that from your website host. So that's what domain hosting is. Your website hosting, as we discussed before, is where your website, your WordPress website files live. Now, there are two ways of connecting these two things. The first one is called the A record method. And this is when we just change some records in our domain and say, go and point at the web files over here, and it will do that. And that's where you can also set up your email records, for example. You might be using Google, or your domain registrar might provide you with email. So that's one way of doing that. One of the advantages of that, of course, is if you decide to move web host, your email is ineffective, and that can be a really good reason to use the A record method. The second one is DNS, which is when you tell your domain, you change a setting, you change what they call the name servers, and you make it think it lives over where your website hosting is. And that means your website host would then provide all of those extra services. Now, there's no right and wrong way. Both are fairly easy to set up. And in just a moment, I'm just going to show you the back end of my domain registrar, my domain hosting, which is GoDaddy, and some website hosting I have with SiteGround. So here we are in the back end of GoDaddy, which is where I buy all of my domains. And we're going to look at the two different areas where you might change the settings. So the first one I took, and what you're looking for normally, it will say DNS or domain management or name servers. And what you're looking for are two different things, the DNS records or the name servers. So here are my DNS records. They are pointing to Cloudways. In this case, all I need to make that record is this server address. You can see these name servers here. They will always be present in this list of things, but these are the actual GoDaddy name servers. I'm not changing those because I'm using the A record method. And down here I have my Google Mail settings as well. So everything I'm doing is set up here, my email, and my A records are pointing at my Cloudways server. The other one is, if you go to name servers, you will see I could change these, and I would just need to go and find out what the name servers are in my hosting. Now, I've just jumped into SiteGround because I think it's typical of most hosting dashboards, and I wanted to show you around that. So remember, if we were going to point the A record, we need our IP address, which is there, and that's the one that I would put into the A record. But if we were going to change the name servers, that's there. This is the kind of format you're looking for. And most hosting companies make it really easy for you to find this. I'm also just going to show you some other areas of a web hosting account which you need to be aware of and which are really useful. What I don't want to do is scare you. I just want to show you where things are. It's really useful to understand, especially when you start cloning your site or doing migrations, how the file setup is of WordPress. And we will look at this in a bit more detail in another module, but suffice to say, most hosting companies have a file manager, so you can go in and download files, for example, and I'm just going to give you a very quick example, is when you have, actually I don't have, I'm in a different site here, I don't have any files present here, but yeah, so basically the file manager is a really handy tool to have. If you are wanting to connect via a third-party FTP tool, and that's what we use for bulk uploading and downloading files, you will find all of your details here. You can see I could get my FTP credentials and use that with what we call an FTP client like FileZilla, but skim over that. That's why I showed you the file manager. Most things can be done via that. The next thing I want to show you is security, and the one you're going to really want to look at is backups and your SSL manager. So we'll deal with backups in a minute, but the SSL manager is your security certificate, and that's what gives you that little padlock which shows everybody that your website's secure. So these days it's really obvious if a site doesn't have what they call an SSL certificate. You will know this yourself if you've ever tried to access a site and it says, warning, the site isn't secure. So we need to make sure we have that, and a good host will give you this for free. The most common one is Let's Encrypt, and you can normally just install that. You see, I don't need to do it because I've done it, but if I wanted to, it will give me Let's Encrypt, and that's free, and I just say get, and it sets the whole thing up, and my little padlock comes on my site. And you'll also, especially in SiteGround, gives you some extra tools you can actually enforce to make sure it's secure. I should have done this really. And often hosts will have some extra things. You can see if there's any blocked traffic or security tools. The next thing I wanted to show you is caching. This is useful if you've ever updated your site and thought, why isn't it changing, or why don't the changes show on mobile? It's probably because you've got what's called server-side caching going on. So it's just a case of finding that and clearing out the cache, just like I've done there. Now, if it's a good hosting company like SiteGround or Cloudways, who I also use, they actually have a plugin for all of these things. So they have a security plugin and a speed plugin, so I can clear the cache from the back or front end of my website. So that's just an extra bonus thing to look out for when it comes to hosting. Now finally, let's get into the kind of WordPress area, because this is what you'll be most concerned about over the next kind of period of time as you build your site. There's two things here. If you're looking to do a fresh install, you're looking for words like install. If you have a cPanel website, you'll know you have it because it says cPanel in your hosting. You might be looking for Softaculous or the words app installer. I think in Cloudways they call it apps or applications, but essentially you're looking for that WordPress symbol to install. It's a very simple one-click process. You can add your username and email and create a fresh install. So that's it for most of the settings you'll need to know about in your hosting. These days the control panels are really friendly and easy to use, and of course, if you get stuck, we're always happy to advise you.